years ago or so, I decided that I wanted to learn how to play the keyboard. And so instead of going and taking lessons like a normal human being would do, I decided I wanted to take a shortcut because I had seen an infomercial on TV for this thing called the Magic Light keyboard. Basically what it is you plug songs into the side of a keyboard and it'll actually light up the keys. And that's how you learn how to actually play the keyboard, is through that. Now, I was convinced that after just a couple months, probably, I would become a world-class pianist. That I'd be that type of guy that I'd be at the airport and I would see one of those pianos that's just there at the airport, randomly just sitting there, and I would sit down and just start tickling the ivories. And a crowd would gather around and everybody be amazed by my keyboard playing. I was convinced that I'd be the hit at all parties I would go to, that, oh, they have a piano there in their house. And I'd sit down and I'd start playing the piano. And people go, oh, Gilbert, we knew you could preach, but we didn't know you could play the piano. Oh, what, this? Me? No, it's nothing, right? I was absolutely convinced I was going to be an expert. Not so much. Remember my story a couple months ago, or maybe it was just last month, about the drum set when I was 5 years old, that I was convinced I was going to be a drummer, and I only used it one time? This Magic Light keyboard, I may have played it, 6, 8, 10 times, and then I put it in a closet, never to be seen again. Now, the difference between this time and when I was 5 years old, the drums were a gift. This time I had spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars on this keyboard that I only used a couple times, put it in a closet, and eventually I gave it away to somebody else. Now, before you start judging me, because I can see it in your eyes right now, before you judge me, admit it. You've done something similar in the past yourself. There's been something that you're like, I'm going to spend my good, hard-earned money on this appliance or this gadget or this piece of technology or this new tool. You were convinced that, oh, my life is going to be complete. And then it wasn't. It ended up in the closet just like my Magic Light keyboard. You realize that you had wasted money. But isn't it true that so often we spend money and we just spend it and spend it and spend it, thinking that if I just have it, whatever it is for you, if I could just have it, then my life will be complete. Then I'm going to be happy. Then I'll be satisfied. And so to buy more and more and more stuff, we're in this constant pursuit of more money. We're always going, if I just had a little more, if I just got a raise, if I just got a bonus, if I got a promotion, if I got a new job, then life will be great. You think all of your problems have to do with, I just don't have enough money for all the stuff that I want to be buying. And this is true of all people. I've heard this from poor people. I've also heard it from people that are very, very rich. People that make over $1 million a year. I've heard that same thing. If I could just have a little more, then I'm going to be happy. Then I'm going to be satisfied. I've heard it from factory workers. I've heard it from sales clerks. I've heard it from business people. I've heard it as I've traveled all around the world. This is a universal problem. We all think if I could just make a little more, have a little more, then life will be good for me. But this leads to a very interesting question. If more money really is the solution, why is it that people that have a lot of money are still chasing after it? That they're still not content with what they have? Why is it that they're still stressed out about money? Why is it that they're still anxious? Why are so many of them living paycheck to paycheck? Why does it seem like more is never quite enough? Well, I'm here to say to you today, it's because more money and making more money is not the problem. It's actually much deeper than that. And so that's why today we're beginning a brand new series called Unstuck. And what I want to do is take 4 weeks to share with you how to get unstuck out of this thinking that you have when it comes to money and finances. You see, so many of you are here today and you feel stuck. You feel stuck in debt. You feel stuck because you are living paycheck to paycheck. You feel stuck in worrying about more and more and more money and stuff. You feel stuck in arguments with your spouse about the bills that keep piling up. You feel stuck that you never can quite get ahead. And so my goal over the next 4 weeks is to share with you how to get unstuck. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to look at how do you get out of debt? How do you stay out of debt? How do you save up for emergencies? Because let's face it, emergencies are going to happen from time to time, aren't they? An emergency is going to come. How do you save up so that you don't get stressed out about it, but you actually have the money to pay for this emergency that you have? We're going to look at how do you invest for your future. And most importantly, listen to me, most importantly, we're going to learn how to become radically generous with everything that God has entrusted us with. You've heard me talk about it so much in the past that we need to live our lives with hands wide open. We don't own anything. It all belongs to God. Anything he places into your hand, you can't squeeze tightly to it because that's all you'll ever have. But as you start to live with hands wide open, God will entrust you with more and more and more and more. Now, I know the question some of you have, and those of you that are tuning in line, you're going, why would we trust you? I mean, you're a pastor after all. Why would we trust you about financial advice? Like, if I need law advice, I go to a lawyer. If I need marriage advice, I go to a marriage counselor. Why would I come to you for financial advice? What do you even know about this? Well, it turns out I know a whole lot. I know a whole lot about it. And so what this whole series is really going to be is Lisa and I's personal story of how we got to become financially independent and that we are stress-free when it comes to finances. See, here's something you need to know. Just about 2 weeks ago, Lisa and I celebrated our 31st wedding anniversary. Isn't that amazing? She's put up with me for 31 years. Now, here's the deal. 31 years ago, we almost didn't get married. Not because we didn't love each other, but because we were so poor, we weren't even sure if we could move out of each of our parents' homes to be able to come together as husband and wife. That's how poor we were. But then we made a very, very important financial decision. A decision that was directed by God. And I will share that decision with you in just a couple weeks, what that was. But because we made that good financial decision, God started to bless the business that I owned. And we were able to get married. And then we had a second business. And that one really took off and exploded. We actually made quite a bit of money over a couple-year period. We were in our very early 20s at that point. We were making pretty good money. Here's the problem. We spent it all. Every dollar that came in, we spent it. And so we're making a high income, but we're spending a very high amount of money as well. And here's why this was a real problem. God called me to become a pastor. Well, guess what? You don't get into the ministry because you're trying to make money. In fact, my very first church, I had to take a 78% pay decrease. Think about that. I was making this, and God says, I want you now to make this. And it was then that we had to make some other financial decisions. I said to Lisa, we've got to really figure out this whole financial thing. Because what we've been doing, we haven't actually been good stewards of what God has entrusted us with. We've been making this, but we've been spending this as well. We've got to find out what is God's plan for finances. And so that's what I'm going to be sharing with you over the next couple weeks, is really our story of how we got to the place that we are today. Because here we are 26 years now later after I became a pastor, and here's the good news. We are 100% debt-free. We don't have a mortgage. We don't have car payments. In fact, I believe we're now 8 consecutive cars now that we've paid cash for. So we haven't had a car payment in 20 plus years. We don't have credit card debt. We don't have any type of consumer debt. We have no debt at all. And we've been able to live a pretty good life. Not because I've had a high income, because again, when I became a pastor, a huge pay decrease, 78% pay decrease. And I looked it up. My very first pastorate job, even adjusted for inflation, I was making less than what the average Costa Rican makes today. All right, so a very, very low income. And for many years, our income was very, very low. It's gotten a little bit better, but it's always been somewhat of a low income. But yet, even with a low income, we were able to get to a place of being debt-free. And I got to tell you, wow, when you don't have to stress about money, oh man, what a freeing thing it is to do. And so this series is going to be me teaching you the plan that we followed of how to handle money God's way, not the way that the world tells you to handle money. You see, the world says you got to make money so you can be spending money. And that's all they do. It's all the advertisements, just spend and spend and spend and spend. But over the next few weeks, we're going to look at how God wants you to manage money, not be spending money. I want you to get unstuck. I want you to get on the path of becoming unstuck. So how many are excited to hear what the plan is? Yeah? You want to hear it, right? All right, I had you do that because that is the most excited you're going to be throughout this whole series. Because everything I'm about to share with you, it's going to be easy, but it's also going to be extremely hard. You're not going to like the things I'm about to share with you. You're going to say, that's too hard. I can't do it. You're going to have all kinds of excuses. And by the way, I've taught a similar series of this in the past many times. I already know the excuses you're going to have. Oh, well, it won't work in Costa Rica. Or it doesn't work for me and my family. Yeah, maybe for other people it work, but you don't understand my family. You don't understand my situation and my circumstances. But listen, I've heard all the excuses before. I've heard it. We are nobody special. Lisa and I are nobody special. We just simply obeyed what God said to do. And even though it was hard, it's the best decision that we ever made. And I'll talk more about that next week. I'll give you a little bit of a principle. In fact, I'll give you a little bit of a preview here. Here it is. You can either play now and pay later or pay now and play later, but regardless, you are going to have to pay. Now, I'm not going to unpack that today, but just let that sink in, all right? So let's jump right into the first thing that's going to make you go, oh, Gilbert, no, I can't do this, right? It's our big thought for the day. Here it is. Ready? I don't have an income problem. I have a spending problem, which in turn means I have a heart problem. Many of you think that you have an income problem. If I could just make more, then all my problems will go away. But you don't have an income problem. You have a spending problem. I looked it up. In the year 2000, when I became a pastor, that first salary that I had was just barely above the poverty level in the USA. So we were living at poverty level essentially, but yet we put God's plan into place and it's got us where we are now today. So you don't have an income problem, you have a spending problem. Now, let me give you the flip side. Because some people have very, very low income like we did. Maybe some of you have a low income and you're thinking you can't do it. But let me share with you the flip of it. I personally know people that make over $1 million every single year. And they're broke. Because it's not how much you make, it's how much you spend. What is the difference? That is what's important. And see, actually the millionaires, they actually have more stress. Because if you're making $1 million and you're spending $1 million, that means usually your bills are bigger. That means when something breaks in your life, it's bigger bills that you have to pay. It's bigger emergencies. There's more stress. There's more anxiety that's going on. And so it's not an income problem. It's a spending problem. You can't live paycheck to paycheck. And so the real question isn't how much you're making, it's how much are you spending. And if you're spending what you make, or for many people, spending more even than what you make. I know in the US, most people are in huge credit card debt. And I looked it up. Here in Costa Rica, a lot of people have consumer debt. $22,000 is the average Costa Rican's consumer debt that they have. I'm not talking about mortgage, all right? A mortgage is fine because that's an asset. I'm talking consumer debt, cars and loans and credit cards and all that kind of stuff. A lot of people have a problem with spending. And except in very rare circumstances, because I understand, yes, sometimes there's things that are going to happen, huge medical emergencies and stuff. But for most people, spending more than you make is an indicator of a heart problem. And that's not my opinion. That comes from Jesus himself. Let's talk about Jesus and money for a second. Did you know that Jesus talked about money more than he talked about any other subject? He talked about money more than he talked about heaven and hell combined. Did you know that 2/3 of all of Jesus' parables have to do with money? It has to do with good stewardship, about possessions. That 1 out of every 10 verses in the Gospels has to do with Jesus talking about money. So he thought this was a very, very important topic and that it should be talked about. And so it's something we have to talk about as well. You see, Jesus doesn't want something from you. He actually wants something for you. Let me say that again. Jesus doesn't want something from you when it comes to finances. He actually wants something for you. And so our key verse throughout the entire series is going to be something that Solomon wrote. Look at Proverbs chapter 22, verse 7. Solomon says this, the rich do what? The rich, what do they do? Help me out. The rich, they rule over the poor. And the borrower is say that one. It's a slave to the lender. That'd be a good verse for you to memorize for this series. The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is a slave to the lender. Notice Solomon doesn't say that debt is just inconvenient. No, he says that debt creates slavery in your life. And what slavery does financially is it means your options are limited, your choices are limited, your freedom is limited. Because debt steals your ability to give and save and to travel and to help other people and to have some margin in your life so you aren't always worried and stressed out. What debt does is it keeps you in this rat race of just trying to keep up and just trying to survive. And this is a universal problem. This isn't a Costa Rican problem or US problem or a UK problem or Australian problem or wherever you may come from. This is a worldwide problem. We have over 25 countries that are represented every Sunday morning here at ECF. And all the countries, different cultures, different languages, different backgrounds, different currencies, but yet same worries, same fears, same temptations when it comes to how to handle money. So that's what I want to share with you this morning is what are these temptations that we've got to learn to avoid? Well, here's the first one if you're taking notes. Number one, I must avoid the temptation to serve money. Again, I must avoid the temptation to serve money. Jesus puts it this way. Look at Matthew chapter 6, verse 24. He says, you cannot be the slave of two masters. You will like one more than the other, or be more loved, or be more loyal to one than the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Now, I've always found this so interesting, how he ends here. Look at this. He says, you can't serve both God and, come on, help me out. You can't serve both God and, money. You can't serve both God and money. He doesn't say you can't serve both God and the devil. Isn't that what we would have thought he would have said? But he doesn't say that. He says you can't serve both God and money. He doesn't say you can't serve both God and power. He says you can't serve both God and money. Why does Jesus say this? Why does he say you can't serve both God and money? It's because he knew that money would be the number one competitor that he would have for your heart. That all the things, all the temptations that are going to come in the world, that it would be money. That would be the thing that would most likely draw you away from following him with all of your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And this is why he talks about it over and over and over and over again, about being a good steward of all that God has entrusted you with. We can't fall for this. We can't be tempted to serve money. Now, I know some of you are saying, well, Gilbert, I I would never serve money. I don't serve money. But listen, I'd make this argument. If you have ever bought something that you didn't need with money you really didn't have to impress people you probably don't even like, you have served money. If you have ever said, I wish I could do this, but I can't, you are serving money. If you've ever bought something because you thought it was going to make you more important, or you thought it was going to make you happy, you have served money. If you're not tithing, tithe simply means 10%. It's 10% that we give back to the local church or wherever, you're spiritually being fed. If you're not tithing, you are serving money. If you've ever neglected your family in order to work more so that you could have a higher income because they deserve the best in life, you are serving money. We can't do that. We can't be tempted to serve money. Number 2, I must avoid the temptation to love money. So we can't serve money, and we also can't love money. The Apostle Paul says it this way. Look at 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 10. He says, the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Some people want money so much that they have given up their faith and caused themselves a lot of pain. Now, this is an often misquoted verse because a lot of people go, oh, money is the root of all evil. That's not what Paul said. What does he say? It's the love of money that is the root of all kinds of evil. Here's what we need to understand. Money is just like fire. Fire isn't good or bad. Fire is completely neutral. Fire can be used to heat up your home or burn down your home. So in and of itself, fire is completely neutral. And money is the exact same way. It's not whether you have a little or you have a lot. It's what are you doing? What's your attitude towards it? Do you love it or not? Money can be used for good or for bad, but your attitude will determine the impact it's going to have on your life. Now, I know some of you are going, I don't have a lot of money, so I don't love money. But that's not necessarily true either, because if you're consumed with getting more money, if you're obsessed with getting more, you love money. If you're jealous of people who have a lot of money, you love money. If you're critical of people who have a lot of money, you love money. And let me say this as well. Just because somebody has a lot of money and they're rich doesn't necessarily mean that they love money or that they're greedy. Some people are just really good at what they do. Some people are good at using money and leveraging money, but money doesn't have them. Again, money is neutral. It's your attitude towards money that really matters. And so when it comes to attitude, let's look real quick at a couple lies that people often have, a couple myths that people have about money. Some people say, if I had more money, I would have fewer problems. Man, if I just had more money, then I'd have fewer. No, probably not. Because usually when you have more money, it means more work, more responsibility that's going on in your life. And again, as I said earlier, oftentimes it actually means more stress when you have more money. Another common lie is this. People think, well, more money means I wouldn't be in debt. If I just had more money, I wouldn't be in debt. But remember, the thing isn't an income problem, it's a spending problem. Because what so often happens is every time you get a raise or a bonus or promotion, you just spend the whole thing. And so if you haven't learned how to stay out of debt when you have a little bit of money, you're not going to stay out of debt when you have a lot of money. In fact, you'll just go into even deeper debt when you have a lot of money. So we got to be careful not to buy into that particular lie. Another lie is people think that more money means I'm going to be more generous then. But you know that statistically, it's actually the opposite. There are surveys that have been done that show that the greater income you make, the less likely you are to be generous, that your charitable giving actually goes down the more that you make. And so we got to be careful not to buy into that lie. So here's the general principle. Money makes you more of what you already are. Let me say that again. Money will make you more of what you already are. So if you're poor and you're a jerk, when you become rich, guess what? You're just now going to be a rich jerk. and probably even more obnoxious because now you have money. If you're poor and you're somebody that's always very, very generous towards others, guess what? When you have more money, you'll probably continue to be generous. Money just makes you more of what you already are. And so Paul writes to us, he says, look, you can't be a lover of money. And maybe when he wrote those words, he was thinking back again to Solomon, who wrote this 1,000 years before his time. Look at Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 10. Solomon writes, those who love money will never have enough, and those who love wealth will never be satisfied with their income. Doesn't that seem very relevant in our day and time? That those who love money will never have enough, and those who have wealth will never be satisfied with their income. And we see this not just with the people of the world. Right? It'd be easy for us to go, oh, look at the bad people of the world. Like they're just chasing. You know what? It happens with us too, doesn't it? I've seen it in churches I've done consulting for. I've seen it in churches I've pastored. And guess what? In my 1 year here, I've seen it in some of you. That you're just chasing and chasing and chasing and chasing, thinking if I just made more, just a higher income, then all my problems are going to go away. Again, you do not have an income problem. You have a spending problem. So the series is going to help you to conquer that, because some of you become slaves and lovers of money and you don't even know it. And here's why this is such a huge problem. And this is why it breaks the heart of Jesus. Look at what Jesus says in Matthew chapter 6, verse 21. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. I don't know if you saw what I entitled today's message, but I called it More Than a Money Problem. Because the reality is, we don't have a money problem. We have a spending problem. We have a lifestyle problem, which in turn means we have a heart problem. We have a spiritual problem. See, so many of you are going, I want to follow Jesus and be changed by Jesus, on the mission of Jesus. You're saying it with me every single week. Follow Jesus, be changed by Jesus, on the mission of Jesus. But yet if we looked at your checking account, if we looked at your bank account, your SimPay statements, your credit card bills, your mouth may be saying that you want to follow Jesus, be changed by Jesus, and on the mission of Jesus, but how you're spending your money is saying something completely different. We don't have an income problem. We have a spending problem. Money isn't the problem. Money just reveals the problem. But if God owns our heart, money can become a tool then to be used to follow Jesus, be changed by Jesus, and on the mission of Jesus. Money doesn't have to be our master. Jesus is. So here's my challenge for you this week. Stop asking yourself the question of how can I get more money? Instead, ask yourself this question. They're going to put it on the screen for you. What does my relationship with money reveal about my heart? Stop asking, how can I get more money? And start asking, what does my relationship with money reveal about my heart? Jesus keeps bringing us back there to this thing, that this is a heart issue. Your spending is a heart issue. And until you resolve this, you're going to continue to remain stuck in debt, stuck in worry, stuck in anxiety, stuck living paycheck to paycheck, stuck worrying about what happens if, like, the refrigerator breaks down or my car breaks down. You're just going to stay stuck there. But I want to help you to get out of that. And so join us next week as we continue the series, because we are going to get very, very practical and biblical on what is the plan to actually get out of debt. Like, no matter how much debt you have, we're going to get you on track, on a plan, so that you can get to the place of being 100% debt-free. Now, is that going to happen in a week or a month? Probably not. It's going to take a little while, but at least we're on the right track. And what we're going to talk about next week is something that you already know, but very few people actually practice. So make sure you're back next week as we continue the series. In the meantime, let's pray together. Father, we thank you for this day, and we thank you for this opportunity we have to come to worship you and just to hear your word. And Lord, I thank you for just how you convicted Lisa and I 26 years ago that we weren't handling your money in the correct way, and that it all belonged to you, and that we didn't have an income problem, we had a spending problem, and that you put us on a plan that has gotten us to the place where we are now. And Lord, my hope and prayer is that each and every person that's here, each and every person watching online, they could understand just how unspecial Gilbert and Lisa are as people. We're not the smartest, but we just got to that place of being obedient. And so, Lord, that's what we want. We just want to see obedience, especially in this area of finances. And so I pray that each and every person that's here, they would take seriously that question of what does money reveal about my heart? That they would wrestle with that all week long. And that, Lord, once and for all, they would settle it in their heart that, you know what, I'm going to truly follow Jesus, even when it comes to following him with my finances. And so, Lord, I can't wait for the rest of this series as we look at the practical principles that you have in your word, and people start to put it into practice, and they're able to come back a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and go, wow, I'm no longer a slave to debt. But the only debt that I have is the debt to love other people. Jesus, thank you. Thank you again for what you've done in my life and Lisa's life, what you're going to do in the life of the people of English Christian Fellowship. Help us, Lord, to trust you more fully when it comes to this simple thing, this tool that you've given us called money.